possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall shatter them like earthenware. Now therefore, O kings, show discernment. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Worship the Lord with reverence and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, that he not become angry, and you perish in the way, for his wrath may soon be kindled. How blessed are all who take refuge in him. So, mythology was in the news this week. The way it happened was, first there was the opening ceremony of the Olympics, and then there was the reaction of mostly Christians or those who identify with Christianity in some way at being disturbed by it. And then there was what appeared to be a cover-up response from the organizers of the Olympics. And in their cover-up response, they claimed that they were not intending any allusion to the Lord's Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. And they merely were only giving a nod to an old ancient Greek god, Dionysius, otherwise called by the Romans Bacchus, and this feast of Bacchanalia, or the Feast of Dionysius. And the claim was, then it became, did they really allude to it? Did they not really allude to it? How many of us are educated? And which ones of us are not educated? And when you begin to look into it, amongst all the people that were, the Smurfs were slandered because it looked like a naked Smurf. It was naked. The man was actually naked. Painted blue, but naked. And so the claim became that their intent was only to promote a message of inclusivity, which apparently is why you had icons from the various sexual deviancies of our age, let's say. Every one of them was sort of represented there. The margins, the marginal weird behavior was represented there. And the claim was it was just to promote tolerance. That's all they intended. Love, tolerance, unity, and our common humanity. And that was apparently the reason for the lyrics of the song, which were essentially a call to get naked and be unified. If we would all just get naked, all of our problems would go away. Which incidentally, the next scene in the opening ceremony broke into John Lennon's infamous Imagine, which is a pretty neutral song. Imagine there's no heaven, no below us, no hell above, right? It's not intending to allude to anything. And so what actually is going on there Dionysius, the god of wine and revelry. Friedrich Nietzsche, that was his favorite Greek god, because just the god of chaos and disorder, followed by some kind of reordering of things, which is, of course, what the LGBTQ plus and whatever else is hiding under that plus sign, which, spoiler alert, is pedophilia and bestiality. So those are the next ones on the decline. And those things have happened in human history. That's why the laws are in Leviticus. So that's what it's aiming at. The destruction of the normal, all about power. There's a Methodist preacher who preaches in drag every Sunday to try to give drag queens power. It's all about power and rework and everything. So the question is, how should a Christian respond to it? And all Christians were trying to figure out how to respond to it. Well, it looks like an illusion. Did they really allude to it? And it seems like they memory hold a bunch of stuff. And so what can we really prove now? And then you get people saying, oh, no, you did allude. No, I didn't allude. And my favorite part of this is all of a sudden, postmodern art becomes objective. And you can't just do with the art what you want. Like I had a single particular intent to the art. It's like, whoa, what happened to postmodernism? Beauty's not in the eye of the beholder anymore. There's an authorial intent, and how dare you skew my authorial intent. But I think that it's pretty clear to me, just so you know, my cards on the table, they were indeed alluding to the Lord's Supper. One piece of significant evidence that didn't get memory hold too quick is the Statue of Liberty looking lady, who was the organizer of that particular scene, is a well-known activist. And she had posted on her Instagram and then deleted the gay New Testament. So it seems pretty obvious. But this morning, what I want you to think about is, and this is a thought that was crossing my mind later in the week. Just suppose that their apparent cover-up press release is true. Just suppose that they didn't actually mean, okay, we can't judge their hearts. They didn't mean it at all. They had nothing but good feelings. And it just so happened to allude to the Lord's Supper. And all they meant, let's just see what would follow. All they meant, if the claim were true, is just to allude to Dionysius and to promote love and tolerance and inclusivity of everyone. Then what? The point I want to make this morning is that is rebellion. And that would be a mockery of the Lord Jesus Christ. So even if the cover-up were true, the cover-up would be rebellion. How can you say that? Isn't inclusivity and tolerance good? No. We've been taught to think it's good. And Christians have been made to feel scared anytime someone says, well, we're for inclusivity. And then we feel like, oh, I can't be against inclusivity. So then you move into saying, well, yeah, and we too. And you get off into this. We don't live in an inclusive universe. We live in an exclusive universe with a king. What exactly do you call hell? Eternal, conscious torment away from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power in outer darkness. You don't call it inclusivity. You call it exclusivity. Being shut out. There is a kind of Christian inclusivity, right? You want Jew and Gentile, seed, male, female, all of this. So there is an inclusivity, but it's an inclusivity underneath the authority of God. We are commanded to be inclusive about the things that the Lord tells us to be inclusive about. Does he tell us to be inclusive about sodomy? Or does he say, put to death the sodomite? You say, well, Jeffrey, would you be in support? Yes, I would be in support of God's law. I would be in support of sodomy being outlawed and adultery being outlawed and every other one of, and then people say, well, you're not going to get rid of sin that way. People will just do it in a corner. Like, good. Let them do it in the dark, in the corner, and hide away from the rest of society. No, it is not Christian to be for the Obergefell decision was an error. There's nothing in Christianity that says, oh, you have to have equal right to marriage. No, number one, it's not a marriage. A marriage is defined as man, woman. You're not man, woman. It's like calling a triangle a square to be inclusive. Sorry, there are certain attribute requirements to be in the category of square. So, the point I'm trying to make is actually good for certain things to be marginalized. Should sodomy and pedophilia, do we want to live in a nation where we pay taxes to give money to people who are pedophiles and sodomites? Or would you want to live in a nation that privileges family and marriage and children and the raising of children? Yeah, it's good for these things to be normal. It's good for queer to be queer. It's good for it to be weird. What they're trying to do, there's a book that came out in the 1980s. Look it up. It's called After the Ball. I think it was 4 psychologists that did it, and they studied how to infiltrate American society and change it on homosexuality. And we're just like the fish that doesn't know it's wet because it just lives in water. We're used to watching a football game, and you just have to see a commercial with 2 men. That's one of the stages they outline. Desensitize. Just start putting it in front of them. So that's the aim of this thing. It's to put Christians on the margins. It's to swap out the margins. It's to put that which is normal on the outside and that which is it's to create chaos. How do I know that? Because I know where they got it from. Despite that book. You know where they got it from? Well, they say they got it from Dionysius, the naked man, and how awkward. I mean, just think, there are people doing disturbing things in this tableau. One of which is there's a young girl who walks off with an older man in the scene. I mean, you think pedophilia ain't coming? You were just shown it. Where did Dionysius get it from? Where did the Greeks get it from? So John Lennon imagined, let's just imagine there's nothing and we're all just naked and we're all just hippies and we all just smoke pot, and that'll do it, right? We'll turn our swords into plowshares and everything will be wonderful. Where did he get it from? Dionysius and the pagans. Where did they get it from? As Van Til would say, from Satan. What do you mean? Hear me out. I'm saying that the doctrine of inclusivity that we hear today in our culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, just swap around the last two, it means die. It's death. But it's a kind of inclusivity that is pagan for this reason. Go back to Genesis 3. And how did Satan begin this? What did he say to Eve? Ye shall be as gods, to quote the old version. Now, what do you call it if we were to all pretend to be gods? You call it polytheism, many gods. So you got monotheism, that's belief that there's one God. Polytheism, that's belief that there are many gods. What we practice today in our society is polytheism, and we are the gods. So what inclusivity means is, let's all be polytheistic deities and have respect for all of the polytheistic deities around you. What is true for you, I mean what is absolutely true for you, what is absolutely moral and immoral for you, you decide. And then I'll do the same thing. And then you'll do the same thing. And you do the same thing. And we'll all just understand, Braden, Kenneth worships Vishnu. I understand that you pray to Jesus. So we're going to have a moment of silence in our school, and he will pray to Vishnu, and you will pray to Jesus, because we believe in respect and tolerance. That's polytheism. Jesus is not a deity amongst deities to be put on the same playing field. That's not what he comes claiming. It's exclusive. So this is everywhere around us, and it is important to be able to identify this as rebellion. And what I'm trying to tell you is the thought in your head and the desire in your heart to be autonomous, you will decide what is right. You will decide literally who lives or dies. If I want to kill my baby, I kill my baby. If I want my baby to live, every mother, we live in a society where every mother is the Greek emperor, and they say, live, die. Which Hannah says in her prayer is the prerogative of the Lord. The Lord kills, and the Lord makes alive. You see what we say, though? I will kill, and I will make alive. And what the transgender movement has been is co-opting the sad cases of children when they're going through puberty. Every kid, when they go through puberty, has a crisis, pretty much, or has a couple of moments of wondering what is happening here and what is going on. How do I interpret this? And they've co-opted that, neutered people for life, butchered people for life. But at the bottom of it, think of that, it's worse than abortion. Abortion is like, I'll decide who lives or dies. Transgenderism is, you don't get to tell me who I am, God. I will tell you who I am. I will define myself. It's self-definition, everything. Whatever I am, whatever I think, whatever I need, I am not defined by God outside of me. I am the definer. I own the dictionary of how you deal with me. That right there is the essence of Satanism. The essence of Satanism is not the Exorcist movie and crawling backwards upside down the stairs like a spider. The essence of Satanism is you will be God and you will decide. It's captured in Milton's Paradise Lost when Satan is in hell and he says it's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. It's captured in Pharaoh's attitude. Who is the Lord that I should obey him? It's captured in that parable Jesus taught us about the Pharisees. We will not have this man reigning over us. It's captured in every single time one of your children say, no. That means they're a child of the devil and must be converted if there will ever be any hope for them. Why is this important? It's important to be able to identify the rebellion because Psalm 2 is in the Bible, and Psalm 2 has a message for the rebellion. More particularly than that, according to the New Testament, if you're a Christian, you're a witness, and mine and your job is to be out into the world identifying the rebellion, and Psalm 2 is our message. So how are we ever going to deliver the message if we can't figure the address out? If we can't see what's happening on the Olympics? If we can't see when our kid disobeys God right in front of us, that's a rebel. That's the rebellion. And the Lord has a message for the rebellion. If we can't identify the address, we can't deliver the package. If we can't deliver the package, how will they ever be saved? So Christians have to know how to identify the rebellion, and then they need to know what our message is to the rebellion. Just let me give you an example of how this psalm is laid out in the New Testament as something we're to be aware of. I'll just mention them quick because it's taken so long in the intro. Acts chapter 4, verse 23 to 28. Peter and John in the early church prayed Psalm 2. And they said, you know what it said against the Lord and against his anointed? That was the Jews, the Gentiles, and Pilate. And Judas. In Acts 13:33, Paul quotes the word today as referring to the day that God raised Jesus from the dead. He said, as for the fact that he raised him up, it's written in the set. Have you never read Psalm 2? Today I have begotten you. That's why that day was so important. Paul applies to the resurrection. This sonship language is in 2 Samuel 7:14, and it alludes to God's purpose to have an heir of David's throne rule over the world. I mean, it's right there in Genesis. It starts in Genesis 3:15. I've been giving Abram his showers lately, and when I'm washing his feet, I'm picking on him and saying, like, stomp your feet. I'm like, if you understand that, you can understand the gospel. It's right there in Genesis 3:15. I will crush the serpent with the heel of the foot. That's the very first gospel message, very cryptic, but that's it. And then from there, so you don't know, who is the he who is to come? Who's the he who is? It's like when you first watch Harry Potter, it's like he who must not be named. Well, who are they talking about? It's the most general as you could put it, but then it narrows down. It's like, okay, it's going to be a son of Abraham. And then by the time you get to the end of the book of Genesis, it says, oh, it's going to come from Judah. From Judah, the lion will come, and to him will be the obedience of the peoples, and he will rule with a scepter. So there's a king coming from the line of Judah. And then you read the rest of the Old Testament, it becomes clear, okay, it's going to be a descendant of David. And that's why in Romans 1, verses 3 and 4, Paul says, the gospel is about Jesus, and watch what he does. He says, he was born a descendant of David according to the flesh, but he was declared the Son of God by the resurrection of the dead. Meaning, he was in the pool of people of, could have been the one. He could have been the one. He said, well, the resurrection made it plain. He's the one. So this sonship language, I mean, there's so much here in this song. By the way, the word for son is not the Hebrew word, but the Aramaic word, which pipes over to Daniel 7, 13, and 14, the Son of Man. Same word there, who's given a kingdom and dominion and glory. I mean, when Jesus said the Son of Man came to serve, the point was it's ironic because in Daniel you read the Son of Man comes to be served. And a lot of people going off on servant leadership today have missed that. Like, he says, I, the Lord, have washed your feet. He didn't stop being the Lord when he washes the feet. So he serves. They're both true. He serves, but he is going to be served. He is going to receive the kingdom. The word Messiah is used here, which is, of course, applied to Jesus. Just some others. Hebrews 5:5 quotes Psalm 2. Revelation 2, 26 to 27 applies it to you. Jesus says you will reign with him and crush people. You will do it. And we have lots of people today about post-millennialism and taking over the culture like, no, Jesus will rule. Have you not read Revelation 2, 26, 27? I have given authority to you to rule over the nations with a rod of iron. There's more. Revelation 12:5, Revelation 19, 11 to 16. These all use Psalm 2 and apply them to Jesus. But most notably in Acts, the ones in Acts, Peter, Paul, they're preaching the gospel, they're appealing to Psalm 2. So it's important then that you're able to identify the rebellion because God has a message for the rebellion. And by the way, you work, if you're a Christian, you work for the heavenly UPS. You are a deliverer. You have packages to deliver. You have a neighborhood. You're the UPS man in your neighborhood. There are people that you talk to. I don't. Tim doesn't. Mr. Ford doesn't. You have got to open your mouth and deliver the message. So the question is, what's the message? What is the message to the rebellion? Look at Psalm 2. The message is very simply this. The rebellion to the Son is overcome by the exaltation of the Son and will result in submission to the Son. If you don't say this to the rebellion, you left the package on the truck. If you don't say all three, you left one of the packages on the truck. We got a dolly with three packages. Number one, there's a rebellion to the Son out here. Number two, God has overturned it and exalted the Son. Package number three, there will be submission to the Son. Verses 1 to 3 are 4 pairs of parallel lines all about the rebellion to the Son. Why are the nations in an uproar and the peoples devising a vain thing? That word devising is the same Hebrew word for meditate in the first psalm. So they're scheming. Verse 2, the kings of the earth, so these are powerful people, they take their stand. Remember stand? Stand in the path of sinners. And the rulers take counsel. Remember counsel? And who's it aimed against? I don't read my name in here. Against the Lord and against Jeffrey Mercer? Nope. No. John 15 says, I was of the world. So all I got to do to be loved by the world is to just be of the world, to just be in my natural satanic state. That's all you got to do. You go out there and say, I'm for inclusivity. You will be amazing and have a great career and go to hell after it. Anywhere on this planet, you begin to say, hang on a second, there's only one way. Then comes the cross and the nails and the crucifixion and the persecution, because this world has no place in its heart for that word. So it's against the Lord and against His anointed, and it will be against us inasmuch as we get under that red sheet that the bulls of this world are raging at. That's all you got to do is be Christ-like to be persecuted. That's all you have to do. Verse 3 tells us their motive, which I've already alluded to. Let us tear their fetters. The fetters are like hobble horsing, right? The anklets, the chains on the feet where you can't, who wants that? And cast away their cords from us. Lost men, when they hear God's commandments and they hear the way of the Christian life and they hear man and woman for life and they hear repent, believe the gospel, and they hear raise your children this way, they're like Samson with the ropes around them. They just get this off of me. I feel like a slave. I hate the law of God. That's how they feel. Man's problem is not law breaking, it's law hating. It's not about, well, I just don't like that commandment. No, it's we will not have this man reign over us. Which is why Adam and Eve rebelled. Imagine you take some children out here, we're going to have a conference, kids, but down there is a tree, and there's this little thing I taped on the tree. Y'all don't touch that, but all access to everything else, everything, the light for the eye, everything. People turn that around into like, oh, eternal damnation for one thing. No, the right way to think about it is you would not be told to do even one thing. If you're given the world, think of that. Some men and women are like, if we could only have this house, then we'll be content. There's a kind of rebellion in us that like, You could have everything. You could own all the finance, everything. It's just yours. And still mess it up. Because we will not have this man reign over us. So that's what's at the heart of, I will not be told that I can't kill my child. I will not be told what gender I am. I mean, I will not be told you can break it out. It's a little kid, and you're telling your child, you say, hey, it's time to go to bed. I will not be told when to go to bed. You must understand. There are methods of parenting out there that deny the most fundamental gospel fact that your child is a rebel. That's why they're having problems with the rules. But let me add to that, adults are rebels too. They're just overgrown children. Why is it so hard to submit to that employer? You know why. We will not have this man reign over us. I'll not be bossed around and told to do. So what's God's response to this? I mean, people just all day, think about it. Paul says in Romans 1, they suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Do you know what they did when Jesus came? So think about this. You have Romans 1:18, men take general revelation, the stars and everything, and they suppress it in unrighteousness. What did they do with truth incarnate? They buried it in unrighteousness. They did the same thing with special revelation that they did with general revelation. But what happened? God raised him from the dead. And I don't have time to go through them all, but that's how they preached in the book of Acts, right? You put to death this innocent man, but God raised him from the dead. You considered him unworthy of life and crucified, but God raised him from the dead. The whole point is God overturned. The spit flew back in the window, is the point. Gamaliel's counsel is the point. You're fighting against God. So verses 4-9 are just about that. And I want you to see, but you got to see the connection that this exaltation of the Son is presented as a response to rebellion. That means you can't declare the resurrection without declaring it as God's response to the crucifixion, which was an act of rebellion. So he says, he who sits in the heavens laughs, and the Lord scoffs at them. It's hard for God to keep a straight face at all the piercing Tower of Babels on earth. Then he will speak to them in his anger. You see wrath language here. When did God do this? But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy hill. How did he do that? He has Jesus speaking here. I will surely tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Paul calls that the resurrection. So the way God spoke to humans in his wrath and in his fury was by raising Jesus from the dead and making him Lord of all. That's why the disciples were terrified when they saw him. By the way, and he had to say, peace. They had forsaken the Daniel 7 Son of Man who has authority to forgive and damn. It wasn't exactly a comforting thought. So he's having to remind them, you're forgiven, you're good. Peace be. Paul does this in Acts 17. He says, God has raised him from the dead and is now declaring that he's going to judge the world through this man. It's like the ultimate response to Marxism. You know, it's like, well, we need the oppressed to rule. Okay, the most oppressed man who ever lived will judge everyone.
Yeah.
He understands and gets it, and he will judge everyone. And look at verse 8. God tells Jesus exactly what Jesus said. All authority has been given to me. I will give the nations as your inheritance, the very ends of the earth as your possession. Yes, as I always say, that includes your math class. Sooner or later, it's coming under dominion. And he says, you shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall shatter them like earthenware, like potter. So here we're just dust. We were formed from dust. We return to dust. And we're just being put in our place. We're just being spoken to here like Job. Like, who is this that darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Who is this that speaks such great things? And you were born yesterday. You are dirt, and you will return to dirt by the judgment of God. Do you understand that? We can play games, and we can eat food, and we can eat queso, and we can watch the Super Bowl and have a life, but you are going to be judged and return to dust, and it is a judgment. And the poetic imagery here is like dashing a pot. And you're going to crumble. That's the kind of evangelism. As it happened in previous generation, the emphasis was like, don't make Jesus Lord, he is Lord. That's in the message here. Look, I want you to know the king that you rebelled against has been exalted. And he is Lord. Okay? And now follows the third package. There will be subjection to the Son. This is part of the Christian message. So we don't go to the world. We're still playing the part of the coward if we don't say this. We still need help going to the Bible and getting courage. Coming to pray, brother, pray for me. I haven't attained the sanctification yet to be a witness for my Lord. Whatever the case may be, you need to, before you die, be able to speak the gospel to people. Right? You need to be able to tell people, look, maybe you're trembling, maybe you can't get it out, maybe you look weak, and that's fine. His power is perfected in weakness. But you just say, look, the message is you're a rebel. What? We know each other. Look, I'm sorry. The message is all men are sinners, and all of us have departed and gone our own way, and we're rebels. That means if you're going to be a faithful parent, there's got to be some times in your life when you look in your child's face, daughter, son, this that has gotten a hold of you, like I have to tell you, this is rebellion. And it doesn't end well because God has exalted this one that you're rebelling against. You're like someone bringing a coffee mug to a sledgehammer fight. It's like when you're playing baseball and you and your friends, y'all are good friends, and then it's that awkward moment when you realize you're both going out for shortstop. You can't have the same goal and be friends. It automatically makes you enemy. And so what we're born in this world is like, I'm a pretty good guy, and I'm going to develop my career, and I'm going to pursue fame and get a bunch of followers. And then someone comes to your life saying, you do know God made this place for his glory. So now y'all both going out for glory. And the message of Gamaliel is God's omnipotent. And he's going to get his glory. So you're either going to bow down or be cut down. That's the message. Remember Peter saying, God has let all the house of Israel know God has made him Lord. So listen to the conclusion. The conclusion is we have to present to people not, well, look, you can go over here and pray to Allah if you want to, or Jesus is an option. Just what do you want to order? Number one, number two? No. There's only one option you get: submission. You say, well, that sounds like we're strong-arming people. We are. God strong-arms people? Yes. How? Again, have you never read of the judgment? That does not sound like he's always gentle and lowly and caring, and I love you, and I'm going to wipe away your tears, and I understand all your pain and frustration and hollering and vents, and it does not sound like that. Sounds like you had better make peace with the king before he comes in judgment. And you're put out of the kingdom. So the message to people is, there's a king. He's Lord of everything. In name now, and will be in fact eventually. And so you are instructed to show discernment, to take warning. And we're to say this even to kings. Remember, Paul prayed that he would speak the gospel to Nero even. Have some fear. Fear of the Lord. Have some fear of God in your life. And kiss the Son. Now, this is used in 1 Samuel 10, of when he anointed Saul, he kissed him. And it's used of the passage in 1 Kings 19:18 when Elijah was told there's 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal and have kissed him with their mouth. So the kiss was like a submissive, it's like every time the prime minister in Britain becomes prime minister, he has to kiss the ring of the king. Something that offends us Americans. Makes the gospel hard for us to get. So we're told to submit and surrender. And again, you see, perish, lest you perish in the way, another allusion back to the first song. And then how blessed are all who take refuge in him. So let me just end by noticing the bookend here. Notice Psalm 1 begins with how blessed is the man. And Psalm 2 ends with, how blessed are all who take refuge in him. Anytime you watch a work of art, a movie like Beauty and the Beast, it begins in the ballroom, it ends in the ballroom. The Lion King, it begins on Pride Rock, and everybody's gathered there. It ends on Pride Rock, and everybody's gathered there. That's the bookend effect of literature and art. It's a way of saying this is a unit. Everything in between these 2 points is a unit. And so Psalm 1 beginning with the word how blessed, and then Psalm 2 ending with how blessed, means these 2 psalms function as the double doors of entryway into the Psalms. They are an intro into the Psalms. Or to put it another way, they're the 2 lenses given to you. You go to see a movie, you put on the glasses. When you come to the Psalms, these are the 2 lenses given to you to see everything rightly. What we've been told is, well, in the first sermon, we had 3 sermons in this intro to the Psalms. Why are they so loved? Essentially, we said, because they save us. And how do they save us? Because they start wherever we're at emotionally, whatever emotional state, even if you're in the state of a rebel, they start where we are. And then they bring us to God. So that's why the Psalms have been so loved. They start with whatever condition we're in as a human in this fallen world. And they bring us to God. So they save us no matter where we're at. That's offered to us in the Psalms. That's why they've been loved. And in the 2 first Psalms intro, what we're seeing is, well, how do they do that? Well, by showing us the one way to happiness, which is the way of the righteous, but then we can't do that. So Psalm 2 shows us that's okay, the king can. So because of the work of the Messiah, we can get on the road that leads to happiness no matter where we're at. Now, I can't think of a freer message. It doesn't matter what sin you've committed, what relationship you've ruined, what state of mind you're in, how messed up your physical body is, your internal psyche is, how many people hate you, like you, how discouraged you are, whatever human condition you're in, because of what Jesus has done, you're not required to fix that before you can start putting your life back together. You're invited, every gap in you, to be filled by Him. Well, I don't read my Bible enough. Okay, trust in the fact that He read His Bible enough. And that righteousness has been counted to you. You see. Well, I don't pray enough. Well, He prayed, and that righteousness has been counted to me, so God views me as I have read my Bible rightly and prayed rightly. And on that account, He gives me the Holy Spirit, and on that account, I begin this process of putting my life back together. So here's the end. He says, how blessed are all who take refuge in Him. This is what you say to the world. This is what you say to your children. This is what you say to your spouse if you have a lost spouse. This is what you say to a Christian when they fall by the way and they're tangled around the axle and they can't get going again. This is what you say. I had two different people I was on the phone with this week. One person, not even a Christian. Another person thinking maybe they're a Christian. And I gave them both the same message. It was just like, well, do you have anything to say? Certainly. It's called the gospel. And it's called a gospel because it means good news. It's called good news because there's bad news. And here's the bad news. And basically, God has given humanity this goal of climbing to the top of the Mount Everest of righteousness and bringing in the new heaven and the new earth. And we all have fallen and we have failed. And Adam predominantly fell, and we have all this rope tied to us. We're in union with him. And so when he fell from the top, we're all falling with him. That's the bad news. So guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to die, you're going to rot, and you're going to be eaten by worms. That's what's going to happen to you. Or you might just be left on the road. Or you might just be run over and your head run over or something in some kind of dishonorable way. The body, you're going to be dishonored. It's horrible news. It is unspeakable what has happened to humanity. You might lay in your own bodily fluids one day. It is horrible what has become of humanity. But because God loves humanity so much, His Son became incarnate, which means He became a man, which means He got on that mountain we're all falling from and took that rope that unites us all and hooked it to His belt. And then we all fell and He dug into the side of the mountain. And when all of humanity hanging from His belt, He crawled all the way to the top and will pull us out of the very grave. Death and Hades gave up the dead and raised us all the way up and make all things new and bring in the new heaven and the new earth, because He is the righteous one. And He will save you. As Moses says, stand aside and see the salvation of the Lord. You don't even have to do anything. He does it all. And so now you have to make a choice. He already made the first move. Do you realize that? He has already attached Himself to you. even if you're lost, because you're a human being. He's already become one with human beings. He's already attached to him. You know what you have to do to perish? You have to say no and cut yourself off. So the message is, don't say no. Hang upon Christ and be totally saved by him and live the rest of your life in peace. No longer, well, I didn't read my Bible. It's like, get the mountain analogy. Of course I didn't, but he did. Well, my faith is kind of small and I don't know if it's right. He believed God. So actually, when I say I'm trusting in his righteousness, I'm even trusting in his ability to trust. You see, anything I could feel guilty about by not keeping God's law, he kept it, and I'm invited to trust in it. I'm just constantly, for the rest of my life, invited to just hang on the belt of Christ and depend on him. I might still get run over. I might still die in some dishonorable way. But eventually, on the last day, I will be raised from the dead, and my body will become a glorious body. And I will walk around for an eternity and live in my home, in your home, which is this world made new. And swim with animals I don't know of, and eat food I don't know of, see colors I don't know of. And if you do not hang upon him, you have nothing ahead of you but the worst of days. So that's the intro of the Psalms. The rest of the Psalms are just seeing all these different days where we're discouraged and this happens and that happens. And you just are brought again and again to the Lord saving you. I mean, this poor man cried out to the Lord and he saved him and delivered him from all his fears. You see why that can happen? Because what's required, he did. So, you've heard another gospel message from one of the millions and millions and millions of gospel preachers down through the ages. And you're a Christian and you have the gospel. When you go out into the world, may this sermon help you just align you, tweak the gun sight a little bit more so that you're able to identify the rebellion when you see it and say, you know what Psalm 2 says? That rebellion, number one, that's rebellion. To not submit to Christ. And God has overturned it by the exaltation of Christ. And you will be brought into subjection to this king eventually. Now we can do this the old-fashioned way, where the king comes and crushes you, or we can do this the wondrous way, where he makes his enemies his friends. Those are the two ways. Amen. May the Lord bless all of you.